point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
We rehearsed this.
I go home and I practice in front of a mirror.
Saying, in the flesh. So this is Energy Week, and the material that we have is the energy headlines, energy news for the last week that I have found by going through the news on the internet. And I do several searches. I do a search of all news at CNN and BBC and Clean Technica, and then I start doing Google searches, and I don't have any idea how many Google searches I do. I've got 3 or 4 standard searches I do. But then when, something comes up, like this first, when something comes up like our first story, I want to find out, is there a better source for it? So I could do a search on that. Actually, not the first story.
Sometimes there is. I mean,
a lot of times there's a better source.
It'll come up and it's been copied from another source.
Right, and sometimes I want a different source because I want a different photograph. Sometimes the source I've got wasn't really written all that well.
Or you only got half of the story, or
whatever.
Yeah.
There's lots of reasons why things can be a problem. But anyway, we're going to be starting with the news of October 18th. And if you go to my blog, which is geoharvey.com, there's a calendar there. And if you see something if we're talking about October 18th and you see something you want to check, you can go to the blog, click on October 18th, and you'll see a list of about 15 articles. And you can find the article that you want among them.
Generally the way it works is I read the headline and then you talk about it. So the first headline is, there is no alternative to a world of 100% renewables. And by the way, I'm going to mention, this is an interview.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting interview.
Yes.
It's worth reading.
Yes.
It's worth going up and looking at.
Oh, and there's a picture with this too, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. This is a picture called Dawn.
Yeah.
And there's Dawn.
This particular article comes from PV Magazine International. PV Magazine has got a whole bunch of parts or sub-magazines or subsidiaries or whatever they are. One is international, another is U.S. And there's one for Africa, as I recall, one for the UK, one for Australia. But this is the PV Magazine International. In a PV Magazine interview, Christian Breyer, professor of solar economy at Finland's Lappeenranta University of Technology, explains a 100% renewables model is not only technically feasible, it is also the cheapest and the safest option for dealing with climate change.
Well, I got a lot of takeaway from this one because I said it was a very good interview.
Yeah.
I'll read some of what I've got. Only a world energy system based on 100% renewable energy can stop climate change and its disastrous consequences.
Right.
Do we have other alternatives to 100% renewables to save the planet? Absolutely not.
No, we don't.
Absolutely, that's what he says.
Yeah, one of the things that we have to remind people of here is that when we're talking about 100% renewable energy, that is not the same as 100% renewable electricity.
Yeah, he's talking about transportation and everything.
Absolutely. If you've got an airplane, it's going to be an airplane with a very long extension cord.
They're working on that.
They're working on it. They have airplanes. I've read that Norway is switching to, they've got plans for switching to electric short-range aircraft now.
They do, yeah.
And the long-range aircraft, well, we don't know how that's going to be done. It may be that we'll have 100% renewable biofuel for those. People really, the cost of, in terms of ecological cost of traveling by train is so low compared to traveling by airplane that
They're not even in the same ballpark.
No, they're not.
They're very, very different.
Yeah.
U.S. greenhouse emissions fell in 2017 as coal plants shut.
Greenhouse gas emissions from the largest U.S. industrial plants fell 2.7% in 2017, the first year of Donald Trump's presidency, by the way.
Interesting.
The EPA said as coal plants shut and as the coal industry competes with cheap natural gas and renewable resources such as solar and wind, the drop was steeper than in 2016, the last year of Obama's administration, when emissions fell 2%. So what's Donald Trump going to do? He's going to bring back clean, beautiful coal. And how
clean, beautiful coal, right?
Well, clean, beautiful coal can exist.
Yeah.
The way that you do it is by leaving it in the ground.
Well, according to this article, the reductions mainly came from the power sector,
Yes.
where the administration has not been able to stop the rapid pace of coal plant shutdowns.
Yes.
In 2017, utilities shut or converted nearly 9,000 megawatts from coal to gas.
Right.
And that's economics happening. That's all that is.
That's
the trend is expected to pick up this year, with power companies expecting to shut 14,000 megawatts. That's 14 gigawatts. That's a lot of power.
That's the equivalent
coal
of
plants.
14 large nuclear power reactors.
For 28 small ones.
Or 28 small ones. That's right.
Well, we got a picture coming up here.
We do indeed.
This was kind of nice.
Yep. And this next item is from Renews.
It is from Renews.
It is.
And that's a Scottish onshore wind turbine. You know, we've talked a lot about the Scottish turbines in the North Sea, but we don't talk much about them being on land.
Right.
And that's what this one's about.
Yeah.
Rural Scots voice onshore support.
Onshore wind is supported by 2/3 of Scots living in rural areas, according to a survey by Survation. The poll found even higher backing for solar and tidal energy, 83% each, and offshore wind, 78%. Only 11% of people surveyed were opposed to onshore wind power. You know, I've talked to a lot of people who have lived in wind farms.
Yeah, you have, yeah.
And I'm talking, you know, people around here in wind farms who would live in a wind farm. Well, the wind farms out west, a lot of them are as big as or bigger than a county. And people live there.
There's some large ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you go to the Roscoe Wind Farm and, you know, on Google Maps and you look at what's there, you can see the wind turbines, you can see the old broken down oil pumping rigs, and you can also see among all the wind turbines the local high school, you know, a gas station.
The hospital.
Well, the hospital with a wind turbine is
right in the parking lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I've talked to them and they say, these things are great. You know, they don't bother anybody and they employ people. And
well, it's kind of interesting because the greatest concentration of wind turbines in the U.S. is in the Dakotas, which is a very politically conservative area.
Yeah.
But there's money to be made in wind, and these people are investing.
Or they're getting jobs.
And they're getting jobs.
Yeah.
And the jobs are good paying jobs.
The biggest amount of wind turbines in any state is in Texas.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
The Dakotas, you know, they're
Texas is pretty big.
Texas is pretty big, so when you're talking about concentration, you have to take both into account. Okay.
But there's another thing happening.
What's that?
There's a lot of wind in the Dakotas, and there's a lot of wind in Texas.
And there's a lot of wind in between.
Yeah, in between.
You know, and we could provide 100% of the energy for this country from wind turbines in the Midwest. We won't, but that's what we could do. Okay, we are up to.
And we could power the country from wind turbines right off the Atlantic seaboard.
That's right. Yeah. We could use one of them one day and the other one the next. Okay, we are up to Friday, October 19th, with an item from CNN.
Justice Department asks Supreme Court to put climate change lawsuit on hold. And we'll be talking about this again later in the show.
We will, yeah.
And we've talked about it before.
We have. The Justice, in fact, many times over the last, I don't know how long, year plus, the Justice Department filed an emergency petition asking the Supreme Court to put on hold a federal lawsuit by 21 miners used to say the federal government is failing to act to curb climate change, and this is depriving them of rights to life, liberty, and prosperity.
Well, we'll talk again about this.
Yeah.
There's been some very recent developments in exactly this. I
Exactly.
mean, within the last day or so.
Yes.
These politicians have blood on their hands,
Yeah.
and the death toll continues to rise. Recent scientific studies underscore the dire emergency ahead. The to-do list is the opposite of what they're doing, and the people are paying a heavy cost for the cynicism and cruelty of politicians in the pockets of the fossil fuel industry.
Yep.
It's time to hold these reckless politicians into account.
That's right. Now, our next item actually addresses some of that. Not in the United States, but in India. This is from
India and China. Yes, yes.
NDTV.
Switching to clean energy may save. I'm going to put me up here again.
There you
Switching
go.
to clean energy may save 11 million life years in India and 15 million life years in China.
Now, this is not lives, it's life years.
Yeah.
Which is...
It's a life times a year.
Yeah. It's 11 million years of life. In other words, if you cut 2 years out of the lives of each of 5.5 million people, that's 11 million.
That's a good
life years.
explanation.
India could have an estimated 11 million life years each year. That is 11 million life years every year. By replacing...
It's hard to figure
It's
out.
hard to figure out. Sorry, if you're not getting it, don't worry. Neither are we. I kind of get it, but by replacing coal-fired power plants with clean, renewable energy, according to a Harvard study, burning coal is a major cause of air pollution, which is one of the largest contributors to death in both India and China. Again, why are we doing this? Because it's convenient, because somebody makes money, because that's the only way people know how to do it. And why don't we stop? No reason.
Well, the takeaway from this article is the 2.7 billion people in India and China, more than a third of the world's population, breathe some of the dirtiest air on the planet.
Yeah. I got news for you. Vermont's air is not as clean as people would like to think it is.
You're right there.
You know, and
You're right there.
I go back to that same thing from the American Lung Association, where they said our pollution from transportation is costing people in Vermont $330 million a year in health costs, which is
You've mentioned that before.
$480 per person, and that's for 48% of the pollution that we produce. So, you know, I mean, we're talking about $1,000 per person in Vermont for burning fossil fuels. That's expensive.
It is.
You know,
It
and that's
is.
medical expenses, which means why are you paying that? Not because you're having fun. It's because you hurt.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
Okay, we are up to Saturday, October 20th.
Yes, we got a picture coming up.
We have a picture, that's right. We have a floating wind turbine.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's not anchored to the bottom of the shore. Well, it's anchored by means of chains or cables.
Yeah.
It's not sitting on the shelf.
Yep, so it bobs up and down.
Well, this particular turbine is interesting. It's got an interesting history.
Yeah,
It was originally installed off the coast of Portugal,
yes.
but it was a kind of an experimental thing.
Hmm.
It was there for 5 years, and then they relocated it to Scotland. This particular picture that we're looking at,
Yes.
that particular turbine. Well, anyhow, the headline is here that the Trump administration opens the California coast to wind power projects, and they're going to have to use floating turbines because it's too deep out
Yep.
there.
For the first time, the federal government is opening the door to offshore wind energy development on the California coast. The Trump administration is soliciting proposals for wind power projects in 3 areas totaling more than 1,000 square miles in federal waters. This is from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and I want to point out to people, a lot of people have difficulty dealing with geometric areas.
Yeah.
1,000 square miles is the equivalent of a piece of territory that's 10 miles wide and 100 miles long.
Yeah.
It's big, but it's
not.
it's not all that big.
You think 1,000.
Yeah,
And it's yeah.
yeah.
What would it be? Square root of 1,000, whatever that is.
Oh, 300 and
Something.
something.
300 and something
40, yeah.
miles.
The square root of 10 is not all that far from pi. So
Yeah, that's correct.
you know.
That's correct. Well, a quick takeaway here, and this is the author talking. I'm very bullish on offshore wind, and harnessing this renewable resource is a big part of the Trump administration's Made in America energy strategy. Interior Secretary Zinke, and this is me talking, doing something right, Zinke's behind this.
Yeah.
Okay. And right now, these floating wind generators are currently 700 feet tall, so they're as big as the other ones.
They're huge. And you know, another thing, too, that's interesting, put the picture back up, would you, Tom?
I can do that.
If, people, that's another thing, is that people don't understand tsunamis. Okay?
Okay. I don't either.
A tsunami travels at almost the speed of sound. They're just incredibly
you can't swim
fast.
faster than it, huh?
But a tsunami, the distance from one trough to the next is hundreds of miles. So it takes you an hour to go up and back down again. That wind turbine, if a tsunami hit, if you were standing on that thing, you wouldn't even notice.
Okay, because the tsunami doesn't become a big wall of water until it reaches the shore.
Until it reaches the shore.
Yeah.
That's right. And when my father told me this. He was on a destroyer in the Second World War, and he said that they had a tsunami that went under the ship while they were out at sea. They didn't even realize it had happened until they heard about it. And they
didn't even know it.
They didn't even know.
Yeah.
On the other hand, they went over the vent of an erupting volcano that was underwater.
Wow.
Not knowing that this was happening.
Oh boy.
And all of a sudden they found themselves inexplicably sinking. Because the water was really warm.
Yeah.
And it was not as buoyant.
It wasn't supporting the ship?
Well, the ship wasn't sinking. It was just dropping lower in the water.
Yeah.
But, I mean, these are things
strange things. Really strange things.
Okay, our next item is from the New Jersey Herald.
Yeah,
we're back to
that Supreme Court case.
Right.
Yeah. Supreme Court stalls youth climate change case.
The U.S. Supreme Court has temporarily blocked a high-profile climate change lawsuit that 21 young activists brought against the federal government. The order freezes trial proceedings in the U.S. District Court in Oregon until lawyers for the young people provide a response. Now, the response had to be in by Wednesday, which was yesterday.
And it happened.
And it did happen. So
then they backed the kids.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court backed the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what was happening was the government's trying to shut the case down.
The government wants to shut the case down. They don't want this case in front of the court.
Right.
And
they got a good chance of losing, and they know
that. The government has a good chance of losing, and if they lose this case, it's going to
open the floodgates.
Open the floodgates, very likely. And the fact that the Supreme Court can back those kids, and when I heard the government's argument, the federal government's argument as to why this should be thrown out of court, I thought to myself, the Supreme Court is not going to swallow this one.
What was it?
They said that if the court, they said the issue should be brought up in the political environment instead of the courts.
Okay.
Which is like saying, we don't want you people to consider this.
We can do it for you.
We want to do it through advertising and getting votes.
Yeah.
And it's like saying the Supreme Court shouldn't have the authority. The people who pay advertising agencies should have the authority.
Well, here it is on Friday. That's last Friday, October 19th.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court froze these proceedings.
Yes.
Which meant they're in place. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen soon. I mean, their court dates are coming up in
last time I saw this court case is coming up in a few days.
Yeah, the department lawyers had asked the court to dismiss the case, and the young activists have until Wednesday, which was yesterday, to provide a response, which they did, and the Supreme Court bought it. So they're going to appear.
They bought it temporarily. You never know what's going to happen with these things. Okay, our next item is from Energy News Network.
We're coming back closer to home.
New England. That's right.
New England power line opposition brings together an unusual alliance.
This happens all the time. Groups that are often on opposite sides of energy debates are making cases against the proposed $950 million, 1,200 megawatt transmission line, which could carry Canadian hydropower through northern and western Maine on its way to Massachusetts.
Well, Massachusetts needs the power. How do they get it? And every time someone comes up with a proposal, it gets shot down.
Absolutely.
And a lot of it, well, in this particular case, it's the small power generators that are complaining, and the environmentalists.
Yeah.
And that's the unusual blend there.
That's the unusual blend, and it is people who want to push natural gas and people who want to stop natural gas.
Yeah.
Who are agreeing that they don't want this transmission line. Well, I got news for you. This kind of thing is going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, you got two opposing forces. I mean, Massachusetts needs the power.
Yep.
There's surplus power up in Quebec.
Yep.
How do you get it from here to there?
Yep.
You know, and every time someone proposes something else.
Well, there are other proposals that we could.
Well, there's a couple of them going down the middle of Lake Champlain.
And there's a couple of them that go under the waters of the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, yeah.
So they could send it from New Brunswick to almost direct to Massachusetts.
Well, how do you get it from Quebec to New Brunswick?
Well,
that's the Canadians' problem.
That's the Canadians' problem. The issue here is truthfully, I would not rather have this go through Maine than go through the Atlantic Ocean. If there's a repair that needs to be done out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, it's not going to be easy.
It's not going to be cheap either.
It's not going to be cheap, and it would mean that a whole lot of people would be without power. We saw this happen in Tasmania, where the link between Tasmania and mainland Australia broke.
Yeah.
And the people in Tasmania were beside themselves. They were having to pay huge amounts of money to run diesel generators to get power.
Yeah.
So, okay. Should we go on?
Yeah, we got another picture coming up.
We have a picture coming up, and we are up to Sunday, October 21st.
Now, get the picture there.
This particular item is from D. Smog.
Now, that's a picture of the Philippines after the last hurricane, which just happened about a week ago.
Actually, I think this is...
This is an older picture, but they did have a hurricane about a week ago.
The article was about this, yeah.
As climate science denial leading to human rights violations, asks a Philippine commission.
Now, yeah, but this is what we were talking about before. Now we're talking about a federal agency of a nation bringing this up as a question, and I got news for you. This is going to happen more and more and more, because we've got nations that are scheduled to be wiped off.
Say that again?
We've got nations that are scheduled to be wiped out.
That's true.
Little island countries in the Pacific that are going to be lost, and they're sitting there saying, "Who's doing this stuff?"
Think the movie South Pacific.
Yeah.
I mean, it's these little island countries. It's just exactly what they are.
Absolutely, and so they're in many cases they are represented in the UN, and they're going to go to the UN and say, "We've got a problem," and we are.
And they do.
And they do. It's real. So all of a sudden, we're in a situation where the United Nations, I think, is probably going to get involved in human rights violations.
There's a little takeaway here, which is kind of nasty.
Did I read the blurb on this? I don't think I did.
I don't think you did. You might as well.
As climate change liability increasingly lands in courtrooms around the globe, the Philippines Commission on Human Rights is taking a different and unique approach, investigating climate change impacts as human rights infringement.
That's a different way of looking at it.
It is. But it's the same thing that we were talking about earlier in this show.
Well, a little takeaway here, and this is kind of scary.
What's that?
Documents show that oil companies were funding organizations saying things they essentially knew were false.
Yeah.
They were also simultaneously funding discredited contrarian, skeptic, and denier scientists in order to counter scientific consensus.
And we've had clear evidence of this.
We know the names.
Yeah, we know the names. We've talked about them on this show. Okay, should we go on, Tom?
Yeah, we got an interesting one coming up here. Let's see if I can...
This is from Scientific American. And
are extreme weather events linked to climate change? That's a good question to ask.
Can a single extreme weather event be attributed to climate change? Question. 10 years ago, the answer to the question would have been a solid no. But the science of identifying singular extreme weather events as results of human-caused climate change is changing fast. And what they're saying now is, yes, we can attribute a certain part of this disaster to climate change.
That's exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which means, in turn, you know, if you take Hurricane Harvey, for example, you can say, well, 50% of the damage of this came from climate change. The hurricane would have happened, but these huge areas would not have been flooded.
But it's worse than it would have.
Yeah. And
because the ocean's warmer.
Exactly. And so we can say $50 billion out of the $100 billion price tag of this particular event was produced by fossil fuels, and the fossil fuels industry, as we've been saying from these other things, has been providing misinformation, saying that this isn't happening so that they can continue doing this. Let's go after them for a little money.
Look at the hurricane that hit Texas, South Texas. It rained for about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Incredible amounts of rain.
Yeah.
And a hurricane would have hit.
Yes.
But it wouldn't have had that much rain.
That's right.
And the same thing just happened with the one that went through western Florida.
Right.
Especially when it got up into the Carolinas. It rained for, I think I saw somewhere they had a foot of rain.
Well, and this followed that horrible hurricane that hit North Carolina and then turned south into South Carolina and then went back north again.
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
This was, well,
we had a lot of rain
there. One hit the panhandle of Florida. The other one, which was a couple of weeks earlier, hit North Carolina, and the second one actually contributed several inches more rain to the flooding that had been done by the first one.
First one, yeah.
This is a serious problem.
So the hurricanes would have happened anyhow.
Very likely.
But they're worse than they would have been.
That's right.
And then mostly they're worse because of the rain.
Yes.
And the intensity.
And, interestingly enough, you can put a dollar value on that, which means you can go to court. And that means, in turn,
there will be lawsuits.
I have no doubt there will be lawsuits. And, you know, this suit that the state of New York brought, the Attorney General, against ExxonMobil, they're saying you lied to your stockholders. And, you know, I think Rex Tillerson, for example, is a man who could very easily be considering himself vulnerable.
I would think. He's been lying to his stockholders.
That's what they say.
That's what they say.
Okay.
And it's not the people he's lying to. He's lying to his employers, basically. The stockholders.
The stockholders, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a little quick takeaway here that I hadn't been aware of. More than 80% of the people living in the United States report having experienced an extreme weather event in their lifetimes.
I've had several of them.
And the severity of those experiences are only set to increase.
Yeah. I've had 4 different occasions when my power was out for upwards of a week.
That's an extreme weather event.
I think it is, yeah. One of them was Hurricane Bob. One of them was the perfect storm, the famous perfect storm.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple of them when I was living in New Hampshire, where we went without power for a week because of ice or snow. Okay.
We got an interesting one coming up here. I'm going to put up a picture.
Yeah.
This is an interesting article.
It is. This is from Clean Technica.
And that is a Tesla.
It sure
Tesla
is.
Model 3.
Yeah.
And that's what they're talking about.
That's right.
The prices for the new Tesla Model 3 and other popular electric vehicles is lower than the used prices.
Over a year into production run, the Tesla Model 3 is still selling at a significantly higher prices on the used market than it sells for new.
That doesn't make sense.
Is it a joke? No, it's real, and it's actually the new normal for the best value EVs in several markets around the world.
Well, it's a case of supply and demand.
This has happened before. You know, people our age even don't remember this. I don't remember it because it happened before. Much of this was about the time I was born. But in 1942, the federal government went to the auto industry and said, you can't make cars anymore. except for emergency police, military, and so
Jeeps.
forth. No cars
No civilian
for
cars.
civilians. And so there were no Chevrolet civilian cars from 1943 to 44 and much of 1945. I don't know that there were any for 45. They might not have been ready to produce. So what happened after the war was there was this huge backlog of demand. And if you happen to work for a car sales organization, you could be really popular because somebody could say, put my name on the list for this year and for next year and for the year after that. And because if you got a new car, they were so hard to get that a year after driving it for a year, you could sell it for more than you paid for it.
That's interesting.
You see, and that's the same market that we've got now.
So that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a case of they don't want to wait for a new Tesla. I don't know what the wait is, but it's significant.
It's months.
And they're buying new ones and they're paying
Right.
quite a bit more.
And these new Model 3s are not all that expensive. My son, who is not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, knew that he was going to be getting a new car within a year or so. So he's putting his name down for a Tesla Model 3.
Well, with the incentives, they're about 35 grand.
Yeah, I don't know what the situation for incentives is right now.
Yeah.
But
They've been that way.
The Model 3 is, I think that Tesla cars are going to have, I don't know if it's the Model 3 or just the one model of Tesla that has sold well enough. But with 200,000 cars, the incentives go down. So I believe the incentives are going to be down.
The incentives, it's built in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes down every year.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether that applies to the Model 3 or not, but it's not that the incentives disappear, it's that they are reduced.
Well, there's a takeaway from here that's kind of scary.
What's that?
Consider this article a heads-up call. This is how it ends for fossil fuels.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen this over and over and over again. Tesla, in terms of income, is the biggest selling car. Their prime car is the biggest selling car in North America. They're out competing every model from Ford, every model from GM.
Well, they cost a lot to buy, but they cost virtually nothing to keep up. I mean,
Yeah.
what did Jason say?
He needs a new pair of
Windshield
wipers every once in a while. The tires will wear out, the brakes will wear out, but there's not a lot of.
But there's no oil changes, no spark plugs.
The exhaust system lasts forever. Okay.
I've noticed this, and I'm going to bring the car up again. Let's see if I can do that. I know
Somehow
I can.
you can.
Yeah, here we go.
You got to find the curve.
What do you notice that's different about that car right off the bat?
No grill.
There's no grill. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And the first electric cars came out, they had grills.
Yes.
Just decorative, but they were grills. Okay,
we got to
let's
move on. We're up to Monday, October 22nd.
Oh, this is a very important article.
This is a boring, important article.
But this is important.
And we'll explain the significance
World's
of it.
first successful ammonia synthesis using renewable hydrogen.
This is from ChemEng Online, Chemical Engineering Online. JGC Corp and Japan's National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology announced that a joint project used renewable energy to generate hydrogen and synthesize ammonia from the hydrogen, and then use the ammonia to power a gas-powered generator.
That almost sounds silly.
It does.
They're using solar power to ultimately run a generator.
Yeah. But the thing
Why
is,
not take the solar power and run it right in?
Yeah.
But that's not what this is about. This is about storing that energy.
That's right. Ammonia can be stored, and ammonia can be used in a bunch of different ways.
Oh, yeah.
What they're doing here is they're feeding it into a gas-powered generator instead of natural gas.
Yeah.
And when it burns in that generator, it produces water and nitrogen.
No CO2.
No CO2.
Bingo. And that's what this is all about.
Right. There are other things that you can do here. For example, if you have there are fuel cells that use ammonia instead of hydrogen.
Yep.
And what they do is they strip the hydrogen out of the ammonia and release the nitrogen.
Doesn't that pollute the air?
No.
The air is like 80% nitrogen
almost
anyhow.
80% nitrogen anyway. And this is a situation that we've talked. I think almost since the beginning of this show, which is, by the way, pressing on 5 years now. We've been doing this.
Very close, yeah.
It's like next week will be our 5th anniversary. We've been talking almost that entire time about using ammonia as fuel.
Well, what they say here, the ammonia is an energy carrier.
Yeah.
In a chain, it does not emit CO2 from production to power generation.
Right.
Solar ammonia could create an innovative, low-carbon, hydrogen-fueled economy. I'll say that sentence again because that's a big sentence. Solar ammonia could create an innovative, low-carbon, hydrogen-fueled economy.
Right. Okay, chemical and engineering news is the source of our next.
Yeah, we got a picture coming up for the next one too.
No. Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
This kind of nice
It's
picture,
a pretty
actually.
picture, yeah.
Let's get it up.
Okay.
There it is.
What do you got for a title?
Counting the ways to store renewable energy.
Weren't we just talking about that?
Absolutely.
A mind-boggling array of energy storage technologies.
I'm going to leave that picture up for a while.
Yeah, isn't it nice?
Nice.
Is being tested in labs and workshops across the globe. Among them are chemical, electrochemical, mechanical, and thermal energy storage systems, all competing to get attention of whoever wants to store energy. So there you go.
This is a quick takeaway. Energy storage technologies will be needed to keep the lights on when the wind drops and the sun goes down.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah. Yeah. We should keep going. I think we're a little behind schedule here.
We got 13 minutes late.
We're
13 minutes
7
left, and we're
items.
on Monday. We're doing okay.
Okay. We've got an item from Clean Technica, unless you want to talk more about
Well, the
storage.
article just mentions what the various countries are doing in the form of storage.
Storage, yeah.
And most of them are different kinds of batteries.
Yep.
But there's some oddballs coming up. There's flywheels.
Yes.
And there's a flywheel operating right now, right off of Pittsfield in New York State.
Yes. It's
And
been
you can
there
go
for
over
a
there
long
and see
time.
it.
It's been there a long time.
And the most nutty ones we saw was a Swiss Energy that's raising blocks of concrete. And another nutty one we saw, and we talked about it here on the show, they're running a train uphill.
Yeah.
The train is full of weight,
Yeah.
and they run it up the hill when they have energy, and run it down the hill. It's sort of like
Generating
pump
power.
storage
It's
using
like
trains.
Pump storage using trains. That's right.
So
Okay.
there's no shortage of
Ideas.
here.
Absolutely. Our next item is from Clean Technica. Still Monday, October 22nd.
Sunflare's lightweight solar. Let solar go where it couldn't go before. This is also
This
interesting.
is also interesting. Sunflare's CIGS solar cells are manufactured with a proprietary technology that prints the cells onto a stainless steel backing. The sheet of stainless steel that they're printed on is durable and flexible and opens up new options for how and where solar panels are placed.
Well, what's interesting about it is these panels, which are basically roofing materials,
Yes,
okay, they don't require roof penetrations.
yes,
You don't have to tie them into the roof. They don't need, they don't need roof penetration. They
Yeah.
don't need racks.
they tie them cell to cell.
They basically glue them in place.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
Okay, should we move on?
Well, yeah, it says it in what you already read, but the lightweight design means installers can put these 10-pound modules where the traditional 40-pound solar modules are not able to be installed.
Right.
So that's what they mean by letting it go where it couldn't go
Yes.
before.
And that means in turn
We're going to watch this. This is going to spread.
that rooftops that could not support the weight of solar modules, because the solar modules on flat roofs have to be ballasted or bolted to the roof. And
Well,
you-
that's
you
what they
can't
mean.
do
They
that everywhere.
require roof penetrations.
Yep, you can't do
or
that
you got to
everywhere.
build huge ballasts up there which have weight.
And now they've got this system that you could use on some of these.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Amazing somebody didn't think about this 10 years
Oh, I
ago.
think they thought about it. They've been working on
Yeah.
it. But they just needed to have a product that they could bring to market. That takes time.
And we got
Tuesday.
another picture coming up.
Yes, indeed. Tuesday, October 23rd. We got an item from Clean Technica.
Well, in case you hadn't noticed it, that's a power plant.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting because there's a hell of a wind blowing up
Yes.
there. Global warming still on track for 4 degrees centigrade despite strong carbon prices. That means carbon charges for carbon,
That's right.
according to Schroders. And I don't know who Schroders are.
The cost of carbon in Europe has soared to its highest levels for almost a decade, but it has not been enough to slow the pace of global warming, according to Schroders' latest climate progress dashboard update. Schroders is the company that maintains the climate progress dashboard.
Okay, so they're watching climate progress.
Yeah, it remains on track for 4 degrees C. Actually, this isn't a surprise to me because as carbon prices have been going up and down and up and down, and they have been down for the last couple of years. And
so this is a carbon tax they're talking
yeah, it's
about.
basically a carbon tax. When the price goes up, that you've got a coal-burning power plant out there. It's going to continue burning coal. It just pays more. And
it pays more tax.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not going to change things quickly. It'll change things slowly. So
While it looks small, it's likely to result in dramatic effects in the long term.
yep. Our next item is from Clean Technica.
This is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Air quality in Bergen, Norway, Norway's EV capital, is better than at any time since 2003. I visited Bergen when I was in the Navy,
Oh yeah.
and it was a lovely town.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful place.
But that was before 2003.
Yes.
Yeah. Bergen is known for its scenic beauty, but also for something less pleasant, which is smog. Bergen's temperature inversions trap all emissions from cars and buildings, but Bergen's smog is disappearing as the percentage of EVs grows. So,
Well, they also have how would I say it? They're knocking back old wood stoves and coal stoves and
Yes.
furnaces.
yeah, well, they've had a problem.
They had a problem. They're trying to fix it.
Like Los Angeles,
Yeah.
temperature inversions, they're trying to fix it. They've been fixing it for years, so they've been bringing it under control. Our next item is from the Washington Examiner, and we have a
We
photograph
got another
here.
picture coming up. We got
That's
some
right.
nice pictures this time.
It is. Yeah.
That's not a real picture, though.
Yes, it is.
Is it really?
Yeah, if you look at that, you'll see that that solar array is
Oh
tracking.
yeah, you can see
and
the.
you can see the masts under the trackers.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure if this isn't a real picture, it's a really well done fake.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
see this kind
Now
of thing.
somebody walked around and found the ideal spot
Yeah,
to take that
and
picture.
I see this kind of picture all the time, and they're almost always fakes, but this one I'm pretty sure is real. What do you have for a title?
Republicans learn to love wind and solar jobs after once mocking them.
Republicans used to deride so-called green jobs when former President Barack Obama promised to create millions of them. Now there are nearly 3.2 million clean energy jobs in America, and the industry has more jobs than fossil fuels in 42 states.
Quick takeaway here.
Yeah.
California has the most clean energy jobs, ranking first in solar and fifth in wind.
Yep.
Now here's the other one that's a little bit more surprising.
Yeah.
Republican-led Texas has the most wind generation. Indeed, for rural Republican states, Kansas, Iowa, Oklahoma, and South Dakota generate more than 30% of their electricity from wind,
You know what?
and together employ more than 9,000 people.
This is an interesting one. The state with the second highest amount of solar energy per capita. What is it? California's first. What's second?
Massachusetts?
Vermont.
Is it Vermont?
Yeah.
Is it really?
And
And there's not much evidence of that.
not much, and as a matter of fact, the...
Oh, it's per capita though.
Yeah, per capita. We don't have a lot of people. But the Energy Information Administration occasionally, does an inventory of what solar power in past has. What solar power there was in Vermont, said there isn't any there because they didn't count anything for some purposes unless it was at least 5 megawatts.
And they're all small.
Yeah, although we
Yeah.
do have one 5 megawatt plant now.
Which is interesting. Yeah, I was planning on going to their open house, and I just got
Okay,
lazy.
our next item is from CNN.
We got another picture coming.
We have a picture, yes, let's
Here
do
it
that.
is.
There it
We
is.
were just talking about that picture.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, here it is. An oil spill you have never heard of could become one of the biggest environmental disasters in the United States.
The Taylor oil spill is still surging since it started 6 years before the tragedy at Deepwater Horizon in 2010. So this has been going on since 2010.
That's right, you never heard of it.
It may have dumped 30,000 gallons of oil each day since it began, and the environmental destruction just continues.
Well, it was a small one to begin with.
Yeah.
And it just kept going, and nobody paid much attention to it because it wasn't spectacular.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's just been seeping and seeping and seeping. There's, in this article, there's a picture, there's a video from it, and you can see this now from the air.
Yep.
And they're saying that even it is about to exceed the Deepwater Horizon spill that everybody knows about.
Yep. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica.
Oh, yes. How your local elected officials can support clean energy. And there's a little, I'm going to alert any activists here because there's a 2-page handout you can download.
Absolutely.
If that's your thing.
Yeah.
You know, because we here right in Brattleboro could use a little bit of help.
We could use some help with this stuff, and almost any town in Vermont could use some help. Actually, almost any town anywhere, with very few exceptions. Municipal elections often fall off the radar during national ones, but the cities retain a surprising amount of power over their energy future. Here is a list of 11 resolutions, actions, and rules that you could make your local city council or mayor a clean energy champion.
Well, we've got 3 minutes left. I've got the 11 rules, so I'm going to run through them real quick.
Go.
1, go for 100%.
Yep.
2, commit to developing local renewable energy.
Yep.
And here's where we could use help. 3, transform city lighting, which means LED street lighting. They've done that already here in Brad.
They've done that here, yeah.
Blanket city buildings with solar power.
Yep.
When you look at Main Street, all of those buildings, they're not city-owned buildings, but they're all flat roofs.
But they need to have something lighter than standard solar roofing.
Didn't we just talk about that?
We just talked about that.
Absolutely.
Right. Go ahead.
Okay. Switch city vehicle fleets to electricity.
Yep.
Well, they're thinking about that.
They
are thinking about that. I know that.
Yep.
Fund local energy investment with utility franchise fees. That's an interesting concept.
Yep.
Minimize zoning and permitting costs for renewable energy systems.
Absolutely.
That's something could be done.
Big.
Require solar on all new buildings. Well, that could be done.
Yes.
Require energy use disclosure on sale or rental of property.
That's really big.
That could be a big one.
Yeah, really big.
Require rental properties to meet minimum energy standards.
Yep.
Okay, and adopt the most aggressive building energy code allowed. So these are all, they're good ideas.
They're good ideas.
They could be.
We could use a bunch of them. Okay,
and now we get the last one coming up.
Which comes from Clean Technica.
Is this the last one? Yeah,
it
is
is
the last one. We got another picture.
Got a photograph.
And I'll bring the picture up. And guess what that is?
That's a wind turbine, actually.
Well, it's a bunch of wind turbines, really. It's in farming country, and it's showing, that wind turbines can coexist with cornfields.
Yes, and other things.
And can coexist quite well. That's a shadow.
I know that's a shadow.
It looks like a hill.
It's an interesting picture of perspective from the point of view of an artist. But nevertheless, you have read the title. I'm going to read the content synopsis.
Well, I haven't read the title of it.
Oh, you haven't?
No,
okay,
I haven't.
go ahead.
No.
Please read it.
Let's get us up there when I do
it. Yes, let's do that.
U.S. corporate renewable energy procurement hits record levels. This is corporate now. This is an interesting thing.
It's economic. So far,
unsung. We're not hearing a lot about this.
Yeah, a lot of it we don't hear about. So far this year, as of October 19th, there have been 59 deals signed by U.S. corporations for a total of 4.96 gigawatts of renewable energy. This is already a record over the previous high of 3.22 gigawatts set in 2015. But it also represents the greatest number of first-time buyers in a single year. Clearly, what's happening here is that these buyers are looking into the market and saying, well, this is the cheapest form of energy, and not only that, but I can get locked into a low price for a 20-year period.
Yeah.
So they're doing
And
it.
it's good publicity.
Good publicity, and it saves them a lot of money.
Well, corporate renewable procurement is on track to exceed 5 gigawatts this year.
Yeah.
Now, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's right.
The largest corporate products include a 350 megawatt power purchasing agreement signed by Microsoft, and AT&T is really up here.
Yep.
800 megawatts of energy from Oklahoma and Texas wind farms.
Yep.
So they're out there. They're looking.
Yep.
And as you said, they're signing long-term contracts.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to leave.
This
We
is
would
about
love
the end.
to go on, but we'll just have
Well, we
to
got
come back.
4 seconds left. 3, 2, 1.
Bye.
Goodbye, guys.